The Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department. A modern building, powerful equipment, and well-trained firefighters. But the Kilmarnock Fire Department is more than simply a public safety organization. Its roots stretch back to the incorporation of Kilmarnock as a town, and its volunteer spirit has been the lifeblood of this small community in many ways. Begun in 1932 with 12 charter members, the fire department grew along with the town, thanks in large part to an annual summer carnival that served as its principal source of funds. Both the fire department and the carnival have left a large footprint, recalled today by members, former members, and community volunteers who shared their memories with Carol Lee Ashburn of the Kilmarnock Museum. Nancy Hayden Hughes' father, James Hayden, was fire chief on St. Patrick's Day, 1952.
Well, of course, we lived up on Main Street, and my bedroom was in the front of the house. And I woke up, I don't remember what time it was, but I could hear all this cracking and snapping. And then I looked and I saw all this red flashing and everything, so I got up and went and told Daddy. I said, Daddy, I think the station is on fire. See, he owned the station where the parking lot is now.
Right, yeah.
And he said, well, what do you mean? And he got up, and just about that time the siren went off. And so he went down the street, and then I think he called from the station, I'm not sure, but he told Mother and I to call all the fire departments we could get in touch with. He said because the town was on fire. So I don't know how many we called, or even if we called them, but I know we probably called the operator and told them to call them.
In those days, there was no dispatching. You had to go through the
operator. And of course, the town, we didn't have all these outlet roads.
That's
it was
exactly right.
Everything that came from up that way, they had to come down Main Street. And that was when they put all these past the through streets.
Right after that.
Yep. And of course it was cold that night, and the water was freezing as fast as they were putting it on. Yep, windy. And we went over to the mechanics, and Mother and Ms. Mechanic told Jane and I to go up and look out the window. Of course, we wanted to come down the street. And so we went up there, and they said, well, they were going to make coffee and sandwiches and soup because, see, they had a gas stove, and by that time the power was off. And so Jane and I stayed up there, and we said, well, maybe it's safe to go downstairs now, so we went down. We tried to get out the door, but it didn't work. We had to go back up in the bedroom.
I think they put trucks on down on Church Street and down on Waverly, because if sparks was coming off that hotel, big as a golf ball, even larger, So it saved some homes, I think. Anyway, the fire went up the street, crossed the street, and hit Sergeant Brent's store in that corner. Went all the way up, and I helped to move the furniture out of Booth's furniture. We put that there by the Masonic Lodge, and it stopped. They stopped it before we got there. But they fought that until about 6:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning.
Of course, we lived right here on Main Street, and it wasn't very far away, and I slept in a upstairs bedroom right facing the main street. And Lord, during the night, fire trucks came from Richmond and everywhere else, I suppose. And I slept through the whole daggone thing. But somehow the next morning when I woke up to get ready to go for school, something, I don't know what I smelled, you could smell it, I'm sure. And I knew something had happened. And one of the memories I have was, I don't know whether it was that morning, maybe the next morning, when Mama took me to school, when we went to school over here. I would have been 7 then. And the sight you saw riding through the middle of town, it was a catastrophe in a way, but in another way, that was Kilmarnock's version urban redevelopment, you know.
Well, yeah, I was living up the county, and I came here the next morning with my daddy just to look at things, and it was a mess. I wasn't a member then, of course.
Yes, we were living
Edward
there.
and Peggy Davis were a young couple on that fateful day.
Well, it was when the first explosion happened. Well, it was St. Patrick's Day of '52, and Edward J., it was so cold. And he said, you know, I'm afraid we're going to have a bad fire tonight. He said the wind was just howling. And I said, oh, no, don't say that. Well, 12 o'clock, I think it was, close there, the alarm went off. And I jumped out of bed, and when I looked out the window, it was ablaze. I said, honey, get up quick. And this is funny. The house was cold, and we wore flannel pajamas, and he pulled his pants over his pajamas and put his shirt and coat and got his boots, and off he went. Well, I didn't see him anymore until about 10 o'clock the next morning, and but I watched it from my bedroom window. And finally I thought, Peggy, you better get up and get some coffee and sandwiches made. So I called some of the other girls, and we got together and made sandwiches. We hadn't prepared for it, but we had hot coffee. We had a lot of hot coffee. And every time that explosion, it was I guess a gas, would go off. I had a neighbor that had just come here from Germany, Headley, and she was just screaming. She was just going berserk. She had just been through the war, and she just was pulling pictures off the wall, and her husband came over and said, Peggy, can you come and help me with Elna? And so when I saw her, it was really pitiful. She was just throwing things around. I can't take this. I can't take it anymore. So I suggested to Carlton to take her to his father's farm up in Wacomico. And but it was a very, very moving experience. I mean, to see the fire, just big balls of fire flying over on our church, Kilmarnock Baptist. On the firehouse, they had to watch the firehouse. They had to watch homes on Waverly Avenue. It really was, I'll never forget it.
I know, most of us.
By the time of the 1952 fire, the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department had matured into an efficient guardian of public safety, growing quickly since the early days of its founding in 1932. While all of the department's charter members are gone, the stories of their courage and determination live on.
Well, of course, 1932, I certainly wasn't around.
I was.
And Kilmarnock was the first fire department in the Northern Neck. Now, I'll be telling you stories that have been passed down to me, so I hope they're as close as I can remember them and the way they were told to me. Kilmarnock, the next closest, I'll try to probably tell you actually who was around. West Point, Colonial Beach, and Tappahannock, I think, were the only fire departments in the area. And of course, all of those are outside of the Northern Neck.
The first firehouse was located on Church Street near the intersection of Main, today the location of the Kilmarnock Toy Store. But plenty of today's members remember it well.
It sort of was congested there on the corner and hard to back into. And I look at that building today and wonder how we got two huge fire trucks and such a little door, so to speak. But we got to remember, trucks weren't as bulky and big as they are today, and like the old 53 and Chevy.
Many of today's firefighters and former firefighters got their first introduction and first memories of the Kilmarnock Fire Department through their fathers.
Okay, we have 12 charter members in the fire department. It started the fire department years ago, 1932. And my father is one of the charter members. And my wife's father was one of them, and my wife's uncle. So that's 3 out of the 12. They were charter members.
Daddy was very dedicated to the fire department, and it's like the whole town. He was dedicated to the rescue squad as well as the fire department. He was a pretty busy man, and he just served his community. That's about all I don't really remember any particular thing, but every time they had a fire or whatever after the fire, they always, before the ladies auxiliary, I can remember one time that I was little and I went to the fire with him. When we got back, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I think somebody woke up Hugh Norris, and they got him to get him some eggs and bacon. They cooked them up in the old firehouse over there. That was a big treat for me. I wasn't even in the fire department then.
When I was very young, I would come up every Sunday after church. One of the things we would do, we'd eat lunch, and my dad would always bring me to the firehouse, and I'd have to climb through all the trucks and look at the trucks. But I never wanted to blow the siren. That always scared me, because I was probably 5 years old and younger. And when we had one of our old trucks, it was a Maxim fire truck made by Maxim Fire Company. My grandmother, in a parade, my grandmother actually made me a fire suit. And there's a picture somewhere of me on the big grill of this old truck where the old big chrome grills were on the old trucks. And I'm standing in front of that grill. I'm very short anyway, still am. But anyway, she made me a suit, and I had on my hat, I had my dad's pocket badge. Even had a badge on my hat, like most of the firemen.
Oh, let's see. The only thing I can remember is Daddy just loved the fire department. And he wasn't a charter member. I think he might have joined the year after it was started. And I can remember one thing that he always did. Whenever he went to bed, he always put his pants down beside the bed.
So he could get up every day.
Yeah, he could get up and run. Yeah. So.
For many firefighters, there are memorable fires, ones they never forget. Sometimes they are simply a firefighter's first fire.
First fire?
Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember. The first fire I went on was kind of funny. I was working at Norris' supermarket, and there's a butcher over there. And got the call. I had just gotten off work, I think it was. And it was a brush fire. And that was when we had an old brush truck. And I'll never will forget it. I came over to the old firehouse. That's where I started there.
Church Street.
And Church Street. And who shows up but Boots McKinney? And Boots was very towards the end of his firefighting days.
Couldn't drive the truck either.
Well, he had the brush truck out and ready to go, but it took me. I got in. He told me to get in, and he said, "Benny, I can't turn my head." He looked straight ahead. He said, "I can't turn my head, so you're gonna have to let me know if anything's coming right or left." So that's the way it was all the way to the fire. I was a navigator, and he was driving.
I know he.
My first fire call I can remember very well. My dad and my family owned Davis Dodge Chrysler Jeep, and we were road testing a car with our mechanic Wilson Evans, myself, myself, and we were actually coming down School Street, as it is today, and the siren started blowing. We didn't have pagers and all then. You had to listen for the audible siren blowing at the firehouse, and we heard the fire siren blowing. I said, "Take me to the firehouse, take me to the firehouse." And got to the firehouse, and we got in, and it was a brush fire behind the Lancaster High School, the new Lancaster High School in Lancaster. And I remember the guy that drove the truck. I remember we went in the brush truck. It was a '69 Chevrolet brush truck, and Alan Binky had moved here from New York. He was a New York firefighter and my music teacher, believe it or not. And this was on a day we were out of school. I can't remember exactly what day it was, but anyway, it was maybe right after school hours. But Alan Binky drove the truck, and myself and one other fireman drove up there, and I remember my dad was right behind us, making sure I was going to be all right.
As a matter of fact, I do. It was the jewelry store folks, Fred Burke's home down in Taylor's Creek. And I can remember it very well. I think I've been in the department maybe a week. And when the alarm went off, my feet hit the floor and away I went. And we went down and were able to save the home. And it was really pretty exciting and neat to see how everybody worked together and pulled together to make it all happen. It was.
Over the years, there were many memorable characters in the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department.
Yeah, but Carol, I can never, out of my mind, I can never forget the fact of watching Shorty and Robert M. Shorty McCroby and Robert M. Lee running from the Rappahannock Record and going around that corner. Robert M. taking strides of about maybe 6 or 7 foot, you know, and Shorty just waddling along, going around that corner to the firehouse to get the call. I see him like today.
And you know, you remember Sparshot?
Oh, yes.
Maybe enlighten me on this. His little shop was just close to the fire department at the time, you know, with hop, skip, and a jump. The story was that, of course, when the fire alarm went off, he had a few steps and he was there. But the story goes that if he couldn't drive, he didn't want to go. You hear anything about that? You know anything about that?
Well, yeah, I've seen him leave if he couldn't drive.
Is that right? Okay.
And Sparky's driving would scare you to death.
Okay.
But Sparky, there again, was one of our older members.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I got in, Sparky was an old man. And he could drive, but he couldn't fight fire. So he went home.
Yeah, well, we had a call one day, and Jimmy Carey and I went to the firehouse, the old firehouse, and Lawrence Sparshot was there, and he was one of the first ones to get there, and he got in the truck and started the truck up, and we rode with him. And as we were going down towards Whitestone, he seemed to be picking up speed pretty good. We made the turn in Whitestone, go towards Windmill, and then all of a sudden we noticed Whitestone fire truck in front of us at a distance. And I looked at Jimmy, I said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" He said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Do you think he's going to catch him?" He says, "I wouldn't be surprised." And Lawrence caught the Whitestone fire truck and passed it during truck.
There were also members who provided leadership and inspiration for new recruits.
Well, when I joined, Robert M. Lee was chief. And of course we met at the old firehouse, one over on Church Street. And it was really an honor to become a fireman. At that time, most of the firemen's influenced the town. The town rotated around the fire department because it had such good members. You know, we had Robert M. Lee, George Watt Cutler, Boots McKinney, Theodoric Purcell, Henry Pittman. All of those men were influenced to us young, what I, at that time was a young fireman.
Sometimes humor could be found in a fire call.
But a lot of times outhouses would catch on fire. And it's either that or the kids in there smoking.
Okay.
And they would say, the outhouse is on fire. They would say, "Is it a 1-holer, 2-holer, or 3-holer?" That was so funny. That was always just a thing that we would say. And I'll never forget, Francis Talley, love him, would always, when he worked at McGinnis, he was a member, of course, but he always was dressed perfect with a tie, white shirt, usually a nice looking sport jacket on, because he was a salesman. But we were fighting a fire at a shed, and he was on the other side, and he would always go to the fire and come back with not a bit of dirt on him. Nothing. He was standing on the back side of this building, and the building was sort of open at the bottom. And some of us men, I'm not pointing my fingers, but some of us men took that hose, and of course we work with high pressure then, which is a lot different than what they work with today. And we hit that mud on the inside of that building, and that mud went under the wall, so to speak, and ricocheted up and went all over Francis. And we all come out of the fires. We all come out of the building, little small building. And really were nice. And look, and said, "Oh my goodness, you got wet, didn't you, Francis?" He was so upset.
But I don't know who was it, George White or Boots McKinney or someone like that was talking about they went to a fire. They answered the fire call. They were over here and they answered the phone. And the woman says, "Please come, my house is on fire." And they said, "Where is it?" She said, "Upstairs," and hung up the phone.
And sometimes there were reminders of how dangerous fighting fires could be.
Chimney fires. And I was on the outside, and it had engulfed most of the attic part of this two-story house. And we had a ladder up there beside the window. And not thinking, I took the nozzle and broke out the attic window, which is a small window. Well, I was able to get my nozzle up in there and knock down a lot of fire. And when it did, as I was fighting it, I felt the warmth of something running down my arm. And I said, that water is not supposed to be warm, it's supposed to be cold. What had happened, Carol, I had cut one of the main arteries of that glass across my hand, and blood was actually running down. Well, I come on down the ladder, and of course, a bloodstream went on down the ladder. And when I got down to the bottom, I passed out. Because I lost so much blood. Billy Bellows and one other person brought me up here to Dr. Gravett and stitched my arm up, my hand. And that was quite an experience.
Former Chief Ronnie Pouchot says today's modern equipment is a big difference in fighting fires today and yesterday.
Your breathing equipment is something that for years we didn't have. It wasn't around. And that was one of the biggest health problems we had as far as going in a burning building.
Training, however, remains a constant, except today there's more of it.
You know, we had a 30-hour course and a 60, and now it's 120, I believe. So the kids go through a whole lot more training, state training.
In the 1960s and 70s, training often included contests.
I used to run contests. Billy Dameron, Johnny Christopher, Henry Pittman, Junior Brown, all of us. And that was a day of really fun. It was a fun day. I was always a ladder man. Of course, I was a lot thinner.
When you say a ladder man, explain what
that's a form. That really is the basic of the contest. That starts it all. It's a 4-man ladder. The ladder's laying about 50 feet from the start line. These 4 men take off, grab the ladder, throw it up against a backboard, which is approximately 50 feet in the air. And then the ladder man, these 3 men hold the ladder against that, and then the ladder man climbs to the top. And you can imagine, and it's all under time. You go up that ladder, and when you get up there and you ring the bell, that is your time. Okay. They've gotten that perfected down to 9 seconds. That's pretty good. Think about that. That's running and slamming and climbing it. And of course, I guess my best time was like 10:05, and we brought home some trophies.
What else is...
From the beginning, women have played an important role in the support of the fire department through the Ladies Auxiliary.
We were required, like when there were fires, our group would get together and make sure there was food and stuff for the firemen when they came back. We would all come here to the firehouse and work.
Well, Carolee, I was delighted to have a part in the Ladies Auxiliary of Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department. I've been working with the fire department for 58 years. We served delicious dinners to the for the conventions. We took the cars on the road to sell tickets.
That's the cars they gave away.
That they gave away when.
We used to do that.
Yes, we gave. Well, we were really into it.
In the early 1980s, a young Kilmarnock woman, Karen Curry, daughter of the fire chief, made history when she became Kilmarnock's first, and thus far only, female firefighter.
I did get the application put in. I was voted on, and it's my understanding only 2 people did not vote for me, and it was my dad and one of the older gentlemen. But it turned out great. My father ended up being a big supporter of me being in the fire department, and it was like I had a handful of older brothers, and I kept up with them. I did participated in the training. I went on the fires. I was part of the carnival. I had my own booth that I was responsible for. So it was a very good experience.
The camaraderie Karen felt was not unusual. It's a special bond among all firefighters.
It's like police departments, it's like rescue squads, fire departments. They're all one big family. And when you're one big family, it goes together. You bring in friends that you would never met before. You make friends that you would never have the relationship with in the fire department if you hadn't met them in the fire department. Fishing buddies, hunting buddies, it all comes back to a lot of times the fire department.
I think you'll find that most of the guys feel like that they're just like brothers. We're all a family. If somebody gets a trouble, I can assure you that another fireman will be right there. Any fireman. Any fireman in here can call on another fireman, and they will see to anything they can do for them, they're going to help them.
And once people join the fire department, they tend to remain members, sometimes for 6 decades.
Well, my husband last Saturday night received this as a surprise after 60 years of being a member of the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department. Oh yes, he's an active member. When the fire alarm goes off, he'll say, "Let's go," if he hears it. If he heard it, then he wants to go, but I don't always suggest it.
By the mid-1970s, the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department had outgrown its original quarters on Church Street. Planning began for a new firehouse, one that would meet Kilmarnock's needs long into the future.
What a building. And I served on the committee in helping try to design what we wanted and what we needed. And we made many, many trips down to Norfolk, Richmond, a little bit say in Fredericksburg, but we would visit other firehouses to see what they had. And what we tried to do, George Watt heading it up, Cutler, we tried to incorporate what we really needed.
The present firehouse serves the needs of the department and houses a growing fleet of state-of-the-art equipment, all vital to protecting the community.
The engine 11, which is our first-run pumper, that's our main pumper. That goes to all fires. Then we have the brush truck, which is basically a brush truck, which we use basically on all brush fires and all 1050s. It's a smaller truck, which is easy to maneuver.
1050 for the average person.
Is an accidents, automobile accidents. And then we have tanker 12 and tanker 15, which are our tankers to haul water. Tanker 12, the reason being is it's a small tanker, which we can get in smaller places. Tanker 15 usually stages on the outside of the road, where it can go off road, but it'll mainly stay on the main road, and we'll shuttle water from it to the fire. Then we have 14, which we also use for brush trucks. It's an older truck, and that's more or less our tanker for the for brush trucks. And then of course we have ladder 1, which is we've come to rely on a lot, and so has Upper Lancaster and Whitestone. We found more we use it, we find a lot more uses for it. Our first thoughts were in buying it was, and a lot of people don't know why would you need a truck like that?
I've heard that question.
Many times. Yeah. Well, It's not just for a tall building, like, for instance, the 3-story building a bank has, all these tall churches. Our main goal and main reason for buying the truck to start off with was because all your new construction today, all your new homes today, they build them as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And usually that means they're going to use pressed particle board on a roof with 2x4 struts. Well, if you put just a little heat on that, and you got a man, usually when we have a structure fire, we'll go up on a roof and cut a hole in it to allow the gas and the heat to get out so that we can get to the fire. Well, these roofs will collapse on you now because they're so thin, and that pressed particle board will catch a fire in no time. So it's very dangerous for a guy to go up on there and actually stand and cut holes now, and it usually takes 2 to do it anyway, plus you have to put a ladder up there. So we find it's a lot easier just to put the aerial over, hang it down, the guy can retread over, cut the hole, and never has to get on a roof.
The firehouse and the new equipment, of course, were made possible by fundraising and community support. For the last 75 years, one event in particular has been a keystone to the growth and development of the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department, while serving as an enriching part of the culture of this community. Starting in late summer 1935, the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department began holding a carnival to help raise money. At various locations around town before finally settling at its permanent location on Waverly Avenue, the Kilmarnock Fire Department Summer Carnival became part of the fabric of the community. For children, a rite of passage. For adults, a way to serve the community. The carnival featured rides and games of chance, all worked by volunteers.
I've ran every stand over almost.
Everybody hated that stand.
No, I know. I ran the hoopla stand, which was, I think Henry was a chief. And most of the time, yeah, Henry Pittman was a chief. And I think most of the time, the chief was in charge of the carnival. Not, the president was president here at the firehouse. But the chief was always, and their wife was in charge of the food stand. So when Robert M. Lee was chief, Ellen Lee was in charge of getting the workers there, the wives of our firemen, to work on certain nights.
And when she spoke, you listened.
You know you did. Yeah, that's right. She was very firm.
Absolutely.
And like Leah Pittman, when Henry was chief, Leah was in charge of that, and that was a volunteer thing.
Till I got to the point I couldn't hardly stand a hamburger. But, you know, it's fun to think back of the people that came, of our fire department members that came, and I knew exactly how they wanted their hamburgers. And Boots McKinney, bless his heart, he would tell me, Peggy, just turn it over, just flip it over. And I said, Boots, you're not going to eat this hamburger like this. He said, oh, yeah. He said, I don't want it any other way.
Oh, gee, I started off with top Purcell on the Ferris wheel. And then I went all over. French fry stand with Tim Geesey and all the stands, really. I worked in all of them except the merry-go-round. It never was on a merry-go-round. No.
Well, I started off at the ice pick stand with the ice ring, and we had money. We put money on the table, because if you rung the ice pick, we had nickels, dimes, quarters, halves, and even silver dollars. I ran that for 2 years, and I don't recall how we did that, and then they switched me over to the little girls ride, well, little boys and girls, children's ride. At the cars, and the first ride on the first night, one car would go off the track. Of course, it would be the largest child in the car. So I ran that for 2 years, and then from there I went to the duck stand, and that was in 64, 65. I think it had to be 64, because I've been in there ever since. So this is my 46th year in the duck stand.
How many years have you done that?
I guess I've been doing it for about 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
You got got the knack of that now.
Yeah, I think so right
So
now.
anything on-
When the carnival started, I lived over behind the carnival where the TriStar is now. And of course I could hear all the
Kept you awake at night?
everything going on over there.
If I'm not mistaken, I've worked every stand at the carnival, except, no, I've worked every stand at the carnival.
Let me stop you, but everybody hates the hoopla. Have you worked that one?
I worked the hoopla. I worked the hoopla.
Food stand?
The hoopla game was notorious among fire department members and volunteers as being the least pleasant assignment during the carnival.
I was responsible for some stand with these huge rings. It was a horrible stand. I guess the newest person always got that stand. You had to throw rings and get them over squares to win prizes.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It was horrible. I had that for a few years. I'm guessing the newest members get stuck with that one.
Some members, long before they were members, worked at the carnival as children.
Ever since I was a little boy, I worked over, one of my first jobs at the carnival was working with Billy Bellis on the Scrambler.
Oh, Scramble, okay.
And our job was him and his sons and myself. When he turned it off, we'd jump out and we'd grab the thing and we'd slide around to make it slow down to stop it, and we'd help load the cars and things like that. And once I joined the fire department, I ran the high striker, which was the bell you hit and ring the bell. And from that, I moved into the bingo stand, which I ran for, I guess, probably almost 15 years, I guess.
And Harry Bean built that thing, and I know you remember Mr. Bean.
Oh, yes.
He had an axle of a car and had an electric motor, some way of turning that thing, and it would take these rods out and it pull these little cars around. And as far as I know, I don't know if they're still using it now or not, but it was working when I left.
Our rides were all pretty much the original rides we had originally up to probably about safely 5 years ago. The original Ferris wheel was Eli number 5. It had an original crank handle engine, 4-cylinder engine on it that everybody broke knuckles up trying to crank and start every summer. That Ferris wheel has recently been replaced in the last 4 years. That was original. It was rebuilt many times. You know, it was safe. Never had to worry about it. I rode on it. I took my kids on it. I wasn't scared of it. We had aluminum seats made. The old wooden seats got to be obsolete and scary. We had aluminum seats made. I remember that was a terrific cost. And then we ended up getting a new Ferris wheel. We've had scramblers and mixers, swings. Some of that stuff has gone by the wayside because of age. A new merry-go-round. The merry-go-round we have now was not the original. A lot of people think it is. The original merry-go-round was gotten rid of in 1980. And we acquired another merry-go-round which looked very, very similar to the one we had, but it was in much better shape. And some car rides. A lot of folks remember the little car rides, the antique cars and fire trucks. Probably most anybody here 50, 60 years old rode in those cars, no doubt.
Everyone probably remembers with fondness the boat ride, a carnival tradition.
And so Daddy built the first boat ride over there on the Irvington Road property. And then later, when they moved to Waverly Avenue, he rebuilt it there. And as I recall, it must have been 6 or 8 boats in the ride. And my older brother Bobby says that he thinks that E.J. Webb's father actually built the boats for him.
Substantiated early, yes.
Yeah. And I think the boats were painted red, white, and blue, you know, each individual individual colors. And there was the pond was about 3 feet deep, as I recall, a concrete wall on it. And there were arms that radiated out from the hub for each boat was attached to, and then it was powered by a little small, I think about a 1/2 horsepower outboard motor on one of the boats. And so you know, they'd start the motor and a cloud of smoke you know, it would, off they'd go.
Also a tradition, it turns out, playing a prank on the ride's operator.
Mr. Crowther was very protective of his outboard motor and boats. And some boys, now I don't know who would have done anything like this, but some boys on one Saturday night added like liquid soap or wash machine soap to his water, and when he cranked up, he had suds rising about 2 feet in the air, and oh, he was very, very upset, mad. I think he went to everybody in the fire department trying to find out who did it, but I don't think he ever managed to find out who did that.
Though Bob Crowther never uncovered the soap suds conspirators, we can, for the first time, reveal at least one of the guilty parties.
And the last year that we had the boats, I had to stand that was right beside it, which I think now is you squirt the water in it. I believe that's what you do. Anyway, we pretty much knew it was going to be the last year of it. And Mr. Crowther had told us all in the meetings several times that he would not have any more of that putting soap powder in there with the boats. He'd had enough of it, and he'd be getting mad. God, he'd get mad. Well, of course, we had to go ahead and do it. That year, I knew he'd be checking on us and watching us real close and everything. So about 3 weeks before the carnival started, I got me a piece of garden hose, and I dug a trench from my stand. You went to a lot of trouble. From my stand to the boat pool, and I put a piece of garden hose underground from my stand into the boat water. Covered it all up. Grass grew back over it again. You couldn't even tell it. And inside my stand, I had it set up so it was a funnel stuck in it, and I had me 4 bottles of Dawn. And I waited. I waited till he got going good one night. I didn't do it the first night. I figured it'd not be a good idea. But I think it was about the 4th night. I filled that thing up, and you couldn't even find the kids. Boy, he come over there mad.
I remember my first, one of the first things I did at the carnival, this was back a long time ago. Jimmy Curry was running the cigarette stand. We used to take little cork pop guns, and if you shoot the cigarettes off the stand, you can't do it anymore. But I did that one night. I was just a little guy, and I knocked the cigarettes off that stand, and I was so excited. I took them and grabbed them, took them to my father because he smoked. And but boy, that was a big night for me. That's really something, I thought.
Nancy Hayden Hughes, daughter of Chief James Hayden, has a very personal memory associated with the Firemen's Carnival.
My son, when he was born, well, they took me to the hospital, and Bob tried to get in touch with my mom and dad all day long, and they didn't answer the phone. And so I don't remember who he called. Anyway, it must have been his mother, and she called around, and she realized that the carnival was going on. And so they called, and of course, Mother always worked in the food section. And when they got in touch with them, they said, well, they had to go. So they went home to change their clothes, bathe and change their clothes, and Daddy was a cigar smoker, as you remember. Oh, yeah. Well, when they got to the house, he laid his cigar down, and it was lit, and he laid it down. And when they got ready to leave, they couldn't find his cigar. He didn't remember where he'd put it. So they had to spend about a half an hour before they found the cigar.
It did catch the house on fire.
Well, that's what he said. He said, I can't leave here with that cigar. I said, how would it look if the fire chief house caught on fire?
That would be kind of bad.
Anyway, when they got to the hospital, they had just brought me out of the delivery room. Of course, I was out of it by then. And my mother was rubbing my face, and she said, do you know who this is? I said, yeah. She said, who is it? I said, Mother. She said, how do you know? I said, I can smell onions.
For adults as well as children, the carnival's games were filled with excitement, especially because they held the prospect of winning a treasured prize.
We used to get together and go up to Maryland to buy the prizes. That was quite a trip. Go up there, select the different animals and plush bears and stuff like that. And we got really a great relationship between that company and this, and he treated us good, and in turn we were able to treat the general public around here good. And one thing people probably have forgot, we ran what we call a food stand. That's where you play a wheel and try to win a pound, right, a pound of sugar, well, 5 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of flour, grocery stand. And people went to that. I think today that would still go over good. Yep. And then another thing is they had, of course, they had Chuck-a-Luck, which was that was a little bit.
The Commonwealth Attorney got into that one.
Yeah, that sort of disappeared. But another thing that we play bingo, and everybody knows that you win money. But at the time, at that time, you'd win a prize. Right. You had a first shelf, second shelf, third shelf. Beautiful lamps, pictures, iced tea pictures, and really today they're collector's items. Yeah. But if you won one thing of bingo, you'd get the first shelf. And if you had 2, you'd get the second shelf, and so on, up to the third. And Eddie Dawson used to run that stand, and he had it spotless. Everything was in its place. Everything was displayed beautifully, and it was really well done.
In addition to teddy bears and trinkets, one lucky carnival goer would win a new car. Ticket sales would begin well in advance of the carnival, and the new car drawing was always one of the carnival's highlights. Games of chance were also big favorites. In the mid-1960s, though, an overzealous county commonwealth's attorney got an injunction to stop the Chuck-a-Luck game, in which players could win money. The game was subsequently dropped, and the Commonwealth's attorney lost the next election. With the 75th Annual Firemen's Carnival, the Kilmarnock Volunteer Fire Department looks back with pride at a successful fundraising event that has also provided fun and entertainment for generations of Kilmarnock citizens.
Everybody had a good time, and it was a place for the town people to get together, and I think everybody recognized that the money was staying here in town, and that it was for all of us, and that the fire department provided really a necessary service.
Well, that's true, but this carnival was all volunteered run, and I think now they have a few stands coming, but most it's still volunteer run. And when you give money to the fire department, you feel like you're giving it to the fire department. Right there. And people in this county should really bless this fire department, because I don't know what our tax base would be if it was all paid fire department.
That's for sure.
One thing about the carnival years ago, and it hasn't changed a little bit, all of the firemen's wives and family and friends worked at the carnival, which is not unlike it is today. The public supports the carnival, and it takes everybody to run our carnival. But the wives and family members, everybody worked at the carnival. And of course, a lot of children showed up at the carnival putting it together. It was a playtime for kids that I remember growing up with that were in the fire department. Dad and Mom always said I never cost them too much at the carnival because I worked at the carnival from the day I was born.
The Firemen's Carnival is, in fact, a local institution, which is probably one reason it's lasted for 75 years and beyond.
And with this organization, they know that the money is going to be helping this community, helping this fire department, and it's such a community effort to make it all happen. It's not just some people they've never seen before. It's the next door neighbor, it's the guy at the bank, it's local people. So.